15 years ago, he told me about 2% of homeschoolers were single parent families. I'm quite sure that the number has grown.
Yeah. Hey everyone, this is Yvette Hampton. Welcome back to the Schoolhouse Rocked podcast. I am absolutely thrilled that you have decided to join me again today. I am so encouraged every time I hear from one of our podcast listeners, just about the encouragement that you get from this podcast. And it encourages me to know that you are being encouraged. And I completely just stand in awe at the guests that God continues to bring to us. And today you are going to love our guest. Her name is Jo Tate. And we met Mary Jo about 3.5 years ago or so, when we interviewed her for the movie, for Schoolhouse Rocked. And so this is part of our Meet the Cast lineup. And I'm so excited. I've been waiting to get her on the podcast, but waiting until we were getting close to the release of the movie so that you could meet her. And I know you were going to be very, very encouraged by her. We are going to talk about a couple of things this week that oftentimes we get requests for these, and it's not a topic that we have really tackled, but we are going to talk specifically to single parents. And we are also going to talk to those who are maybe trying to work through home businesses and things like that with homeschooling. And I know that today, more than ever, I think in the history of our world, we have more single parents homeschooling. And so we are super excited to bring this encouragement to you. Mary Jo, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Yvette. It's such a privilege and a blessing to be here.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. Tell us a little bit about you and your family, because you you are so fun. As I was reading your profile, your bio, I think it said you had 40 something bookcases in your home, right?
70?
Oh, 70?
Yeah, 70.
Where did I get 40 something from? Maybe that was old.
That might be old, but I actually do have 70 bookcases in my house now.
Oh my.
Got a
Not
big
70
house.
books, 70
No,
bookcases.
and not 70 shelves, but 70, cases, the boxes
Yes.
that the shelves go in.
That's amazing. That's so fun. You are a lover of books. I know that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So in addition to loving books, which we're going to talk about, tell us about you and your family.
Well, I have 4 sons, and we have to look at my notes to remember how old they are. They're 29, 26, 24, and about to turn 21. So they're all grown up now. I homeschooled them all the way from kindergarten through 12th grade, 23 years of homeschooling.
Wow.
I just graduated last year. Yay, me. So I am now a retired or veteran homeschool mom. 19 of those years of homeschooling were as a single mom. And so I'm particularly excited about the opportunity to give encouragement to single moms, because that's a group that needs encouragement so very desperately. We're also going to be talking about home business, and I've actually had a home business even longer than I've been homeschooling and single. I have been an international book editor and book coach for 35 years. I have taught literature from 7th and 8th grade and high school all the way up to adults now. And since I'm officially finished teaching my own kids and at schools and co-ops, I started last year teaching literature online for both high school and adults. And that's been a lot of fun, because it's been exciting to see how much real community we've been able to develop over a Zoom screen. I
Yeah.
was really surprised and delighted by the amount of fellowship and real friendship that developed through that process. So we're going to be talking a lot today about ways to adjust to circumstances. And goodness knows, in the last year and a half, we have all had to adjust to a lot of circumstances. And
Yeah.
so that's going to be a recurring theme there. And probably the last thing that people need to know about me is that I did write a book a few years ago for Homeschool Moms. The title is Flourish, Balance for Homeschool Moms. And since today is going to be, since all 3 of our episodes are going to be pretty short, there's going to be a lot greater detail in that book. And it's been a joy to see how that has helped encourage moms and give them some practical tips to
Yeah.
make it through every day.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a fantastic book. It's one that I have, and I don't know where it is. I told you the other day,
Right,
I'm
yeah.
I'm missing a box of books somewhere and I have no idea where it is. I have some of my favorite books that they have just gone missing and I have no clue what happened to them, but
Yeah.
it must be in that box of
It's in
books. And
that
so
special box. You
it's in the
probably put it
special
in a
box.
safe place so you can
I'm
find it.
sure
That
I
happens to
did.
me all the time.
Absolutely. But yes, we'll put links to your book and we'll talk a little bit about that
Sure.
throughout the week. So let's jump into talking to single parents. You know, like I said before, we are in a time now where it seems like years ago, homeschooling typically was for, you know, husband goes to work, mom stays home with the kids. She homeschools while dad brings home, a paycheck and allows her to be able to do that. And now we are in such a different world with everything,
Exactly.
but with homeschooling. And I'm actually really encouraged to see how many single parents are bringing home their kids, and single dads included. I know that
Yep.
there are many
Yep.
dads who are home with their kids, and it's not an easy task. And it's one that I can't fully relate to on a personal level, but I know many are going through this, and I know that you
Mhm.
can relate to them. So I would love for you to talk with us about what are some of the challenges that single parents face in homeschooling.
Well, I'm glad you asked that because single parents do often feel so very alone. And you made a great point about the number of single parents who are homeschooling is growing every year. Back quite a few years ago, I talked with Brian Ray, who does research on homeschoolers, and
Hmm.
this is probably 15 years ago. He told me about 2% of homeschoolers were single parent families. I'm quite sure that the number has grown,
Yeah,
and there are lots of different ways to be a single parent. I'm personally divorced from an unfaithful husband. You can also be a single parent, a widow or widower through the death of your spouse, or even desertion. You're effectively alone, even if there's no legal or final divorce there. And if your spouse is deployed in the military 6 months at a time, you still have the paycheck coming in,
sure.
but you have many things in common with a single parent. And so there are just all kinds of ways that people are pretty much going it alone. And I want to tell all of you who are in that position one way or another that I've been in your shoes, even though my kids are grown now to some, I'll always, I'm still their mom and I'm still single. And so I understand what you're going through. 19 years of homeschooling as a single mom
Wow.
has put me through pretty much every challenge that there is, I think. And so I understand where you are. I never expected to be a single mom. No little girl dreams of growing up and being on her own. It's not our picture of a happy family. Back in 2001, I discovered that my husband had been repeatedly unfaithful and reconciliation just did not happen. And so I was divorced. I was shocked, I was angry, I was scared, I was embarrassed, especially back in those days in the homeschool culture. I was embarrassed to be divorced. I went around feeling like I had a scarlet D on my chest
Mm,
for a while. I was blessed with good friends who supported me and did not shame me, and they understood what was going on. But I still felt that internal sense of guilt. My sons were bewildered. Their world was turned upside down. I was deeply committed to continuing to stay at home with them and to continue homeschooling, but I didn't know how I could support our family financially. And so are so many new challenges that being single adds. Now, being homeschooling under any circumstance is a challenge.
sure.
Just being a parent is a
Right.
challenge, especially if you have boys around age 13 or 14. But being single does intensify it. Like I mentioned, there's a lot of grief.
Hmm.
There can be shame. Money problems are just multiplied. Many homeschool families are operating on one income anyway. Often the mom has been staying home, like you mentioned. And of all the single parents I know, and I know quite a few of them, very few, a lot of people think, well, you're getting alimony and child support. Well, that would be nice. And some parents do get enough to live on, but the reality is that very often alimony and or child support are either much too little to survive on or are missing altogether.
Right.
And so that's a huge challenge. Finding childcare so that you can work or do errands, just plain being exhausted. You take the normal exhaustion of being a homeschool mom
Yeah.
and multiply it, and it's just overwhelming. And being lonely. I remember one night at our homeschool co-op that I had been, being lonely at home also, but been seeing it out in the homeschool world, as you mentioned. And one thing that sticks in my mind so much, even though it was a relatively small incident, it had a powerful impact on me. About the fifth or sixth year in our homeschool co-op, after we had our great back to school meeting and all that, and it was fun. But as I walked to the car with my box of books, which I was perfectly capable of carrying by myself, I have carried lots of boxes of books to fill those 70 cases. But I saw every other family, the dad was carrying the box of books out to the car. And for some reason that night, it just got to me. And I
Mm.
cried in the car all the way home over something as simple as seeing that these other women had their husbands there to do something as simple as carrying the box of books for them. So it can be little things that cause
Sure.
those emotional triggers. Time management, oh my goodness. When you've got just one person suddenly doing the work that two people have been doing, the um, the time management issue is just huge. And another thing that is maybe sort of a surprising problem, and but you did touch on a little bit, is the idea of feeling second class. One of the great, or not really being a real family. We hear the term broken families, and so that makes you feel like somehow that you're less than.
Mm.
One of the beautiful things about the homeschool culture is the idea of the strong focus on family life and family unity, and that's a beautiful thing. But in that case, just like my night at the back to school meeting of our co-op, it can be easy to feel left out, and I feel sure that others are not doing that intentionally. So
Sure.
this is a word of advice to those of you who are not single parents. Reach out, include single parents, think about how you're speaking about parents and families, and realize there are people who are doing this alone, and see what you can do to reach out and include them. And I've got to say that I'm seeing progress on that. I'm seeing more and more homeschooling books that mention single parenting, and they're more acknowledged and included, and that's a beautiful thing. So that's my admonition to the homeschool culture at large. Now, a word to single parents: don't get defensive, don't get prickly, because it's easy to just, you're already feeling emotional and overwhelmed. And if you feel like someone else is making you feel less than, it's easy to get prickly and defensive. Please try not to do that. You are still a family.
Yeah.
You're a different kind of family than you were before, but
Yep.
you are still a family. And don't
That's
let
right.
anybody else make you feel like you're not. And I encourage everybody, whether you're single or not, to look for what you have in common with other
Hmm.
people rather than focusing on the differences that divide you. And, God's kingdom is full of many different kinds of people, single and married, healthy and struggling with illness or disability. But we all have many things in common, and we can reach out to each other and focus on those things that we have in common.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
I was going to say, I love that you talk about that you're a family, even if you don't have a husband or even if
Mhm,
you don't have a wife, you still are a family. I remember years ago when Garrett and I were trying to have a baby, and I remember
mhm,
someone telling us, even without a child, you're still a
mhm,
family. Husband and
mhm.
wife together are a family,
Right.
just like mom and child is a family.
Mhm.
I mean, there's God's design for the family, but you're still a family
Yeah.
without with a missing piece of that puzzle.
Mhm.
And that's a perfect way for God to fill in those gaps
Mhm.
where there is a gap. So let's take a quick break. We'll be right back.
You're not inadequate. You are perfectly capable. I mean, what is it about a parent that when their child turns 5, all of a sudden the parent's no longer a viable option? Like, oh, you're done. Now it's the school's turn.
I think the quality of education has steadily deteriorated in America. There is an agenda to steal our children.
You feel inadequate because you've been taught by our school system that you're inadequate.
We had no frame of reference for homeschooling other than it just seemed like torture. Like, why would a sane woman choose to be locked up with her kids for 18 years in a row when a school bus would come and take them away and give you like a 9-hour break every day?
No one knows your child better than you do, and no one loves your child more than you do.
And homeschooling changes the game on everything. Homeschooling allows us to say to the child, what sort of life do you want? What sort of God-given dreams, talents, and abilities is he speaking into you?
When we think about classroom education and we ask what makes for good education, almost every professional educator will say low student-teacher ratio, teachers who care, good methods, good curriculum. Well, in homeschooling, you get the best of all of those things.
What we discovered is that it's very efficient to homeschool.
You have the person who knows the student the best. You have the ability to customize the curriculum around the student. You have a great student-teacher ratio.
And I realized I am accomplishing with Sierra in 25 minutes to an hour every day what it's taking the school system 8 hours a day, 5 days a week to accomplish with my older daughter. I loved watching the light bulb come on and watching her want to sit down and read with me. And I loved spending time with her.
There are just so many benefits, including being able to have a relationship with your own children.
Continue doing what you're doing. Don't give up, because I do believe that homeschool moms are America's greatest heroes.
We are back with Mary Jo, and you're talking about some of the challenges that single parents face and what it's like. And it's hard to hear that sometimes, but I think it's important, especially for those of us who are not in that situation, to know the reality of what a single parent is feeling. And so one of the things that I know is really hard is whether, single or not, and you mentioned this, is homeschooling. Homeschooling is just, it can be hard no matter what.
Right.
So being a single parent is hard enough on its own. Homeschooling is hard enough on its own, and it can all be overwhelming. So is it possible to do both together?
It is. And as we've mentioned, there are many single parents who are actually doing it. Now, I'm going to start with the bad news and the good news and then give some practical tips.
Okay.
The bad news is that during those years, there were some days when I did not know how I could make it. There was just not enough of me to go around. I struggled with all of those things that we mentioned earlier: discouragement, loneliness, frustration. And yet what I learned through that is that the struggle is hardest when I focus on my own situation instead of turning to the love and providence of God.
Yeah.
So when we turn our eyes to God, we can remember to be strong in the Lord and the power of his might, like Ephesians 6:10 tells us. And so my biggest word of encouragement to single parents who are trying to homeschool is to rest in God's faithfulness. Because the truth is that none of us, whether we're single or married, can bring up our children well simply by relying on our own power.
That's right.
I love for 2 Corinthians 12:9, and this is a great reminder for all homeschooling parents. And he said unto me, my grace is sufficient for thee, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. Most gladly, therefore, will I rather glory in my infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me. And that's such an important reminder for all homeschooling parents.
That's right.
To get specifically to homeschooling as a single parent, remember that you're solo, but you do not have to go alone. I really encourage you not to try to be a lone ranger. You need to look for some kind of a support network. The church is the first place that any single parent should be able to turn. Hopefully, you have an encouraging family, extended family, siblings, and parents. That's not always the case, but if you do, that's a wonderful part of your support. A good homeschool support group, maybe a co op, godly friends. You may be able to swap childcare with other single parents or even just other homeschooling moms. Um, you can have an accountability partner, particularly if you're working from home, or even a mastermind team if you have a home business. And we're going to be talking about that in a later episode. And I encourage you, don't be afraid to ask for help.
Mm-hmm.
There are people who would be happy to help, but maybe they don't want to risk offending you by offering, or they don't know what you need. Now, unfortunately, the truth is that sometimes people don't want to help. And if you encounter one of those Grinches, just move on and realize that that attitude does not represent God's people. So let people know what you need. And as we were talking about the idea that you're still a real family, you do have to establish a new family identity. You have to find a new normal. And when I'm talking to someone who's newly single or just in the process of going through a divorce, one of the things I always say is it takes about a year to find some sort of a new normal
Hmm.
and feel like you're getting your footing. So don't despair if you're 3 months in and you feel like life's never going to be normal again. Okay, it's never going to be the same again, but you will establish a new normal that works for your family as it is now. Um, you can establish new traditions. Holidays can be tough, particularly if there's visitation involved. So instead of focusing on, oh, this is how we always used to do it and we can't do it anymore, focus on building new traditions, make time for family fun. Um, and all of this, I haven't even talked specifically about homeschooling yet because we're going to have a whole section on specific homeschooling tips. But all of this is how the single parent has to adjust to all of life, specifically including homeschooling.
Yeah.
And again, I want to remind you that God's grace is sufficient. He is
Yeah.
the father of the fatherless, defender of widows, and your family and your life can be a testimony of God's faithfulness.
Amen. Amen. We are out of time for this episode, but we're going to be back on Wednesday and we are going to continue talking about this and bring encouragement to the single parents and to those of you who are not single, but have friends who are single, because I know all of us do. And this is such a great just reminder of how we can be an encouragement. So Mary Jo, where can people find out more about you and what you do?
If you're interested in homeschool encouragement, you can go to flourishathome.com. That is the best place to get my book. It's out of print, but it's still available in digital format, and I still have a few cases on hand. So flourishathome.com will take you to ways you can find the book, and also to my blog, which I'm not very active on, but there's some good things in the archives. And I also have a Facebook page for Flourish at Home, and that's where I'm doing more of my writing now.
Okay. And you said the book is out of print, but you have some, so they can still order the book.
I do have some. Yes.
Okay,
and
good.
I'm happy to sign and ship copies.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, you guys definitely want to get this book. It is a great encouragement to you. So thank you so much, Mary Jo. We appreciate your time today. Thank you guys for listening. We will be back with you on Wednesday. Make sure you share this episode with your friends, and we will see you back here then. Bye.